Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from American authors called What We Live For. But first, let's talk a little bit about surprises. Because it's a sad fact of being a critic that it's rare that you get surprised by an album anymore. You all think you're sick of the blandness on the radio? Imagine going through so much album filler and realizing that if you follow the trends, very little is going to catch you off guard or surprise you. Sure, sometimes you'll get something insane that comes out of the woodwork that completely blows your mind or subverts your expectations, which is why critics tend to shower praise on oddball albums that are unlike anything they've ever heard, and I'll admit I can do that too, but more often than not, it can be really hard to go into every single album with the expectation that every record is somebody's first. Try to capture that emotion of genuine awe and discovery when in reality, oftentimes you've already heard it and sometimes even heard done better. And yet, that's probably why I've got a fond spot in my heart for American authors. Something that will probably surprise a lot of you if you only remember them for their sort of hit Best Day of My Life that rapidly became a commercial product more than an actual song. And from that single, it was widely thought they were just another soulless ripoff of Imagine Dragons before that band went off the deep end. Hell, that's even what I expected when I covered their debut album, Oh What a Life. I didn't expect much, and yet it wasn't anything close to what I actually got. They're far closer to the power pop acts like Semisonic or Fountains of Wayne, just pressed through the modern genre sounds of the time. It all led to a weirdly likable record that didn't quite manage to work all the way through, mostly courtesy of some by-the-numbers songwriting and a frustrating inability for anyone to know what the hell they were doing behind the production boards, but it was still a lot better than most people would expect from that lead-off single. I think it's an underrated album, and thus, I had a real interest in digging into their sophomore follow-up, which promised to continue and expand upon many of the same sounds. And hell, it's been a while since anybody cared about Imagine Dragons, so maybe an American authors might sound more fresh in comparison with modern radio. So, What Did We Live For turn out? Well, honestly, it's a little hard to say. American authors did win a lot of goodwill with me by catching me off guard in 2014, and unless you dramatically shift up your sound, that lightning is not going to strike twice. And while I can definitely say that American authors is taking steps in the right direction by doubling down on modern power pop, most other rock bands aren't doing that these days, I get the impression that they got a ways to go before they make that classic album or deserve to be held up with the greats of the genre. In other words, it's definitely a decent and likable record. I can see why people would enjoy it, but it's not really a great one, at least for me. And you know, the frustrating thing is that for every step American authors takes forward, it seems like they take another step right back, and the best place to prove it is in the instrumentation and production, the latter of which can't figure out what the hell it's doing still. Like the last album, this record is completely skewed in favor of percussion over melody, but I tend to like American authors' version of it a little bit better thanks to stronger guitar accents complementing the beats instead of getting chopped up by them, stronger flow on the grooves, and that rich backing choir, which is where American authors made their first big improvement. I've never been all that fond of the odd, slightly lo-fi vocal pickup on Zach Barrett's vocals. When it's not consistent with the rest of the mix, it just kind of feels a little like a gimmick, and thankfully they lean on that a lot less on this album, which means that his raw exuberance blends with the backing vocals so much better, and I can't understate how much of an advantage that is, because this guy has real charisma, and the more organic this album feels, the better it is. Hell, that guitar line from Right Here, Right Now feels partially adapted from Lust for Life by Iggy Pop, and I honestly wish the band took more steps toward a rock direction. Maybe it's a little bit too smooth right now with the banjo and the mandolin tones, but you know what? They're good enough melodic songwriters to make what some would consider a pretty stale instrumental palette between One Republic and Imagine Dragons make it feel a little bit fresh again, like on Mess With Your Heart or Pocket Full of Gold, the latter which drops into this slightly clumsy slowdown and pickup for the bridge that does definitely stand out. I'll give them that. It's not that bad. And I'll be remiss not to mention the guitar solo on Superman that sounds pretty damn awesome. It's easily the best thing about that song. You wish the guitar solos would show up elsewhere on this album. But the overwhelming problem with this record is cohesion. Because while they got rid of and de-emphasized any synths on this album, I'm not wild about the hollow, reverb-touched pianos, the obvious drum machine beats, and those vocal samples, all which feel like attempts to move towards a modern pop sound and clumsily at that. And not only do they not blend well with the more organic instrumentation, instead of trying to make modern pop choices fit with their sound, they do the exact opposite, compressing their guitars, sanding off any melodic edge, and really making me wish that their hooks had some actual bite to them and their guitar lines had some distortion. It seems like a step in the opposite direction to define a unique sound, and it leads to some real tonal whiplash to boot, like on Nothing Better between the plinking upbeat hook and lyrics that apply at least a little bit more subtlety than what we'll get. We'll come back to that, but the most egregious slip-up comes in the vocal production on Go Big or Go Home. When you have a lo-fi vocal filter and then throw auto-tune auto-tune on the vocals on the bridge, it does not sound good. It clashes there. But okay, fine. You gain some, you lose some. What about the lyrics? Well, following off the success of Oh What a Life, lyrically What We Live For is more focused on the aftermath. Living big, going faster and harder thanks to your success, and a little bit of reflection on losing track of one's roots because of that. And this is where I feel that American Authors runs into a bit of a problem that's kind of hard to describe. One that's only exacerbated by their continued lack of greater detail beyond some snippets. Now, again, don't get me wrong, I like the classic road song references of I'm Born to Run, the lack of place on Pride, the frustrated heartbreak on Replaced, especially that Ryan Adams call out on Mess With My Heart, but we're only getting ancillary details about songs that stick to a pretty recognizable formula with power pop, and don't quite get as interesting or instantly iconic as they should. The track that probably intrigued me the most lyrically was No Love, where our protagonist confronts his stale relationship, and instead of dumping her because they've now grown into two different people, he wants to try to start again fresh if they see if their common ground remains fertile. It's a nice sentiment in a different direction than what I was expecting from the song. But my issue comes in what I'm gonna call 7 years syndrome related to that titular song from Lucas Graham that most people have turned against en masse for its arrogance and overwrought lack of self-awareness. Now, I'll still defend elements of that song. It at least mentions how he's just as easily forgotten by his family he's leaving behind now when he gets old. I kind of like that little bit of pathos that comes through there, but the larger issue that's caused me to kind of cool on that track is the self-satisfaction. And American Authors arguably hits this even worse, holding back songs like Pride and Pocketful of Gold and especially Superman because the stakes don't seem to have a lot of weight to me. I get driving towards that huge chorus as a contrast to the verses, its planting and payoff, but the mood and pace on the entire song often feels so chipper that it undercuts some of the serious questions and dramatic weight that this record needs and comes through in the lyrics. I mean, I liked Replace for actually slowing down and showing how it does sting to be replaced so quickly in relationships. But when Superman shows him looking for a hero, not even before the verse is over does he stress only for a little while he'll need that hero, because moments later he's as strong as Superman. I feel like I'm completely missing the transition here. And then the record tries to compensate for with the existential crises of mind, body, soul as a closer as he feels more adrift and alone than ever. But to end on such a minor note when this album could have hit that dramatic payoff earlier feels like a chance to squeeze all the conflict into the last minute, and it really doesn't quite work for me. And then there was the points that just feel kind of confused or sloppy. Like on Nothing Better, where I'd argue that there might have been sarcasm towards this demanding girl with a line that after her perfections expressed coming as, I don't believe it's true, but the tone there never really pays that off. Or take the many incidents where, or to preserve that admittedly good lyrical flow, they just plug in the same word repeated or stutter the word, which has always struck me as lazy songwriting. I mean, come on, American Authors, you're better than that. So to conclude, look, I don't dislike this album. A power pop record that can deliver as many hooks as this one can pretty much win me over most times. But more than ever, I'm convinced that American Authors aren't focusing on their strengths as a more rock-leaning group, instead trying to win over that sweet crossover money, and as such, the writing and production are taking away from their strongest elements. As such, while I'm giving this a light 6 out of 10, I'm not about to call this a sophomore slump. If anything, American Authors just needs to refocus on an organic sound and find a producer who isn't gonna make their songs feel so assembled in post rather than played naturally. They've got potential with this, which means I don't mind recommending this album, but I definitely think they can do better, so we'll see. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I had the poll up here, so a bunch of you guys are asking me to cover this album, so what'd you think of it? Do you think it managed to work or come together? I'm actually quite curious here. But more importantly, I'm coming up on my 3rd year anniversary on July 10th. As I stated in my previous video, if you guys have suggestions to an album that I would normally cover on my anniversary, which is coming from a year before, from 2015, put your suggestions down here below. You can only vote once, so if you guys are going to put your names forward on a couple of previous videos, I will know about that because I'm tracking everything. Oh, also keep in mind, if you put multiple albums down, I'm going to only choose the one I choose and the one I want to, and I'm not going to tell you which one that is. And beyond that, so I'm curious to see what you guys want me to cover. Voting when all these polls will close by the end of this week. So if you guys want me to cover something, get it in soon and get it in fast. Right now we got a 2-3 horse race, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes through. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I will try to give them a listen. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.